The morning of my sister-in-law's wedding, I found a receipt in my husband's jacket pocket. I wasn't snooping. I was trying to find his car keys because he'd asked me to grab them before we left for the venue. His gray blazer was hanging by the door. He's probably in the left pocket like always. My hand closed around a folded piece of paper instead. I almost put it back. I almost didn't look. It was from a jewelry store downtown. A bracelet. Rose gold, diamond encrusted. $2,400. The wedding gift we'd agreed to give my sister-in-law and her fiancé was a $300 espresso machine sitting in the trunk of our car. I was the one who'd researched it, ordered it, wrapped it. I stood in the hallway holding that receipt for a long time. My husband, I'll call him what he is now, my ex-husband, came down the stairs adjusting his tie and saw me standing there. He didn't say anything for a second. Just looked at the paper in my hand. "That's for my mom," he said. "Her birthday's next month." I was going to surprise her. His mother's birthday was in February. It was October. I folded the receipt, put it in my own purse, smiled at him, said, "We're going to be late." That was the version of me I'd been trained to be over 6 years of marriage, the one who smiled and filed things away and told herself she'd deal with it later, the one who kept the peace at the cost of her own gut instinct. I'm a nurse practitioner. I've worked in a cardiac unit for 4 years. I make $94,000 a year. I bought our house. I carry our health insurance. I paid off the last $18,000 of my husband's graduate school debt because we were a team. Because that's what you do when you love someone, because he was between opportunities. And it made sense at the time. He managed a mid-level events venue. He made $52,000 a year. He was always going to get a better job. He was always about to turn a corner. I told myself I didn't marry him for money. I told myself it didn't matter who earned more. I told myself that what we had was real, that he was kind, that he understood me in a way no one else did. I was wrong about at least 2 of those things. We met at a friend's birthday party when I was 26. He was funny and confident, and he looked at me like I was the most interesting person in the room. 6 months later, he told me he loved me. 8 months after that, he proposed. I said yes in front of my whole family at Thanksgiving and everyone cried. My mother-in-law cried the loudest. I should have paid more attention to what kind of tears those were. She never said anything cruel to my face. She was too smart for that. It was always something small, something deniable. A comment about how I worked, such long hours. Said with just enough concern in her voice that I couldn't call it criticism. A question about when we were planning to have children followed immediately by, "Of course, with your schedule, I can imagine it's complicated." The way she'd look at my husband when she thought I wasn't watching. This long, private look that said you deserve better without a word. She had a friend. I'll call her what she was, the woman my husband was sleeping with. Her name doesn't matter. What matters is that she was younger than me by 4 years. That she'd known my husband since college. That she used to show up at his venue events just to say hi. And that my mother-in-law had been having lunch with her once a month for the entire duration of my marriage. I didn't know any of that until the wedding. The venue was a converted textile mill outside the city. Exposed brick, string lights, the kind of place that photographs beautifully. My sister-in-law looked stunning. Her fiancé cried when he saw her walk down the aisle. I sat next to my husband and held his hand during the ceremony and thought about the receipt in my purse and told myself I was overthinking it. The reception was seated dinner. My mother-in-law had helped coordinate the seating chart because she liked to be involved because she was good at that sort of thing. I found my seat at the family table, or rather, I found the card that had my name on it. 3rd seat from the left. My husband was next to me. His aunt was on his other side. The seat directly across from me, the one that would have been face-to-face with me all evening, the one with the small floral arrangement in the center that marked it as slightly more prominent than the others. That seat had a different card. I picked it up. It had her name on it. Not a coincidence. Not a mistake. My mother-in-law had personally placed that card there. I know because I watched her walk past that table 40 minutes earlier while I was at the bar getting water, and I saw her straighten something on the centerpiece and I thought nothing of it at the time. She had seated the woman my husband was sleeping with directly across from me, at the family table, at his sister's wedding. My husband was standing about 15 feet away talking to his cousin. He hadn't seen me find the card yet. I stood there for a moment. The room was loud, full of people, full of music. Someone was laughing too hard near the entrance. A child was running between tables. Waitstaff moved efficiently with trays of champagne. I set the card down. Not turned over, not crumpled. I set it down flat and I picked up my small clutch from the chair. Then I walked straight to the coat check, collected my wrap, went outside, got in our car, my car, that I make the payments on, and I drove home. I did not say goodbye to my sister-in-law. That part I still feel bad about. I sent her a message from the car that said, "I'm so sorry, a work emergency, I love you, we'll celebrate properly soon." She was kind enough to respond with a heart emoji 2 hours later. She didn't know yet what her mother had done. What she knew came later. What most people knew came later. What most people knew came later. My husband called me 11 times before I pulled into our driveway. I let every call go to voicemail. I sat in the car in the garage for a while, engine off, and I thought very carefully about my next move. I am not an impulsive person. I am the person in the cardiac unit who stays calm when everything is going wrong. I am the person who thinks 3 steps ahead before acting. My colleagues describe me as steady. My patients trust me because I don't panic. I went inside, I poured a glass of water, I sat at the kitchen table, and I opened my laptop. My name was on the mortgage. The house was mine. I called my best friend. She'd been my roommate in nursing school. She's known me for 12 years. She's the person I would trust with anything. And I told her what happened. All of it. The receipt, the seating card, the whole slow history of a marriage I'd been quietly managing for 6 years. She said, "How long have you known?" I said, "I think I've been not knowing on purpose for about 8 months. She said, "Okay, here's what you're going to do tonight." She's a paralegal. She knew exactly what I needed to do. I spent the next 3 hours documenting everything I could think of. Financial records, the receipt photo I'd taken before leaving the house, text exchanges I hadn't let myself look at too closely before. I sent everything to her email. Then I forwarded it to the family attorney my parents had used since I was a child with a message that said I needed a consultation first thing Monday morning. My husband came home at 11:47 p.m. He'd sent 43 text messages in the 5 hours since I left. The first few were angry. "Where are you? What are you doing? You embarrassed me in front of my whole family." Then they shifted. "We need to talk. Please call me. I can explain." By the end, they were just, "Please." I was in bed when he came in. The bedroom door was closed. I heard him stop in the hallway and then I heard him not open the door. He slept on the couch. In the morning, I made coffee and waited at the kitchen table. When he came in, I said, "Sit down." He sat. I said, "I know about the bracelet. I know about the lunches. I know what your mother did with that seating card and I know she didn't do it without your knowledge." He opened his mouth. I said, "I'm not asking you to explain, I'm telling you what happens next. You're going to stay somewhere else starting tonight. I'll give you 2 weeks to arrange it. My name is on the mortgage and I'm not leaving. I've already contacted a lawyer." He said, "You're not going to let me say anything?" I said, "I've been letting you say things for 6 years. I'm done listening now." He cried. "I'd like to say it didn't affect me at all. But that would be a lie. We were together for 7 years. I loved him once. Watching someone cry is never nothing. But I'd also spent those 6 years being smaller than I was so he could feel larger than he was. And somewhere in the last 12 hours, that calculation had stopped being something I was willing to make." I finished my coffee. I had a shift at 7 a.m. His mother called me that Sunday. I let her go to voicemail too. She left a 4-minute message. I've listened to it exactly once. It was a masterpiece of a certain kind of manipulation. Full of concern, full of, "I just want to understand," full of whatever you think you saw, full of the kind of language that sounds reasonable and means nothing. She said she hoped I would give her son a chance to explain. She said she was sure we could work it out. She said she just wanted what was best for everyone. What was best for everyone, it turned out, was not what she had in mind. His sister, my sister-in-law, who came back from her honeymoon to find out what her mother had done, called me 3 weeks later. She was furious. Not at me. She said, "I need you to know I had no idea. And I need you to know she is not getting away with this as far as I'm concerned." She was the one who told me the full timeline. Her mother had apparently been quietly encouraging the relationship between my husband and this woman for over a year, had been feeding her information about our marriage, our arguments, our finances. Had been, and this is the part that sat with me for a long time, telling this woman that I was cold, that I was unavailable, that my husband deserved someone who really saw him. I was working 60-hour weeks, keeping people's hearts beating. I was apparently also failing to see my husband sufficiently. My sister-in-law is no longer speaking to her mother. That wasn't something I asked for or expected. It happened because she is the kind of person who knows the difference between loyalty to family and loyalty to what's right. I think she's remarkable. We still have lunch every few months. The divorce took 8 months. It was not simple, and it was not cheap, and there were days it felt like I was dismantling a life with my bare hands. But my lawyer was excellent, and my documentation was thorough, and the law is fairly clear about assets when you can demonstrate who funded them. I kept the house. He took his personal belongings, his car, and a settlement amount that reflected what he'd actually contributed to our joint finances over 6 years, which, once we laid it out in black and white, was considerably less than he'd remembered. He did not get to claim the retirement contributions I'd been making since before we met. He did not get a share of the equity I'd built before the marriage. He got a fair accounting and the discovery that fair didn't mean what he'd assumed. His mother showed up at my house twice during those 8 months. Both times I didn't answer the door. The second time she left a casserole on the porch. I don't know what she expected that to accomplish. The woman from the reception, the one who'd had a bracelet and a seat at the family table. I found out later she ended things with my husband 3 months after the wedding. Apparently he was too emotionally complicated. He moved back in with his mother at 34 years old. I learned that from his sister, who told me without commentary just as a fact. I allowed myself exactly one small, private moment of satisfaction about that. Then I went back to the paperwork I was reviewing. I want to be honest about what the aftermath actually looked like, because the story doesn't end with me getting in my car and driving away looking triumphant. That moment was real, but what followed was 18 months of putting myself back together, in ways I hadn't anticipated needing to. I went to therapy. I'd resisted it for years. I've always been the capable one, the steady one, the person other people lean on. And there was a story I'd been telling myself that needing help was a contradiction of that. My therapist, who I found through my hospital's employee assistance program and who I will be grateful for the rest of my life, told me in our second session, "You've spent so long being strong for other people that you forgot you're also allowed to fall apart in a safe place." I fell apart in a safe place for about 4 months. Then I put myself back together, but differently, more honestly, with fewer things I was pretending not to know. I went back to something I'd put aside during the marriage. I'd always wanted to pursue a specialty certification in acute care. My husband had always been subtly discouraging about it. Too expensive. Too much time. Did I really want to be working even more? I enrolled 6 months after the divorce was finalized. I passed the exam on the first attempt. My salary went up by $14,000. I'm 33 now. I live in the house I bought, which I have slowly and deliberately made into something that looks like me rather than like a compromise between two people with different taste. I have a garden in the back that I'm still figuring out. I have a cat named after a character in a book I love. I have dinner with my best friend every other Thursday. I am not in a rush to be with anyone. I've been on a few dates in the past year, nothing that went anywhere significant, and I'm genuinely fine with that. I know what I want now in a way I didn't at 26. I know what I'll walk away from, and I know I'm capable of walking away from it. The hardest part of everything that happened wasn't the betrayal itself. People betray people. I'd treated enough patients who'd survived enough things to know that the world is full of hard moments and imperfect humans. The hardest part was the version of myself I'd been before I walked out of that reception hall. The version that knew something was wrong for 8 months and kept setting it aside. The version that made herself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. The version that held a receipt in her hands and chose to believe a lie because the truth was inconvenient. I'm not that version anymore. I don't think about my ex-husband very often. When I do, there's no anger left. Anger takes energy, and I stopped being willing to spend mine on him a long time ago. What I feel is something closer to clarity. He showed me, eventually, exactly who he was. So did his mother. I'm grateful I was finally paying attention. The seat of honor at that table was never meant to honor her. It was meant to humiliate me. To make me feel replaceable, lesser, like I was the one who didn't belong. Instead, it just showed me the door. I took it. I've thought a lot about cause and effect since all of this happened. Not in a mystical way. I'm a nurse practitioner. I live in the world of science and evidence and things that can be measured. But I do believe, genuinely, that the choices people make accumulate. They stack up quietly over time, and eventually the weight of them lands somewhere. My mother-in-law spent years making small, deliberate choices. A look here, a comment there, a lunch she never mentioned, a seating card she placed with full intention. Each one felt deniable in isolation. Together they built something. And what they built eventually collapsed on her. She lost her daughter's trust. She lost her place at the table she thought she controlled. The woman she'd been quietly mentoring into her son's life left him 3 months later anyway. All that careful engineering, and the structure fell. My husband made his choices too, and I made mine, including the choice to not know for 8 months, which is its own kind of decision. I'm not letting myself off the hook for that part. Ignoring what your gut is telling you because the truth is inconvenient isn't innocence, it's avoidance. And avoidance has its own consequences. What I've learned, really learned, not just understood intellectually, is that integrity isn't what you perform for other people. It's the private accounting you do with yourself. Did I act in line with what I actually believe? Did I tell myself the truth? For a long time in that marriage, the answer was no. I knew things and chose not to know them. I made myself smaller and called it compromise. I funded a life that didn't reflect my actual values and called it partnership. Walking out of that wedding reception wasn't a dramatic act. It didn't feel like triumph. It felt like finally telling the truth to myself. This is not something I'm willing to accept, and I'm capable of leaving. That's what dignity actually is, I think. Not the performance of strength, but the quiet, private moment where you act in accordance with what you know is right, even when it's hard, even when no one's watching, even when the room is full of people who might judge you for it. The intelligence piece matters too. Not book intelligence. I have enough of that. But the kind of clear-eyed thinking that requires you to look at your own life without flattering yourself. My therapist helped me see that the story I'd been telling myself about my marriage was a comfortable story, not an accurate one. Rewriting that story with honesty was one of the harder things I've done, and the resilience that came from doing it anyway. From going to work the Monday after I found the receipt. From sitting across from lawyers and accountants and saying clearly, here is what is mine. From enrolling in the certification program I talked myself out of for 3 years. From building something on the other side of a loss that felt, for a while, unsurvivable. My sister-in-law told me once, over lunch, that she admired how I handled it. I told her I didn't handle it gracefully. I held it together because falling apart wasn't an option I could afford. She said, that's exactly what I mean. I think that's what most of us are doing, most of the time. Holding it together because falling apart isn't an option. And slowly, over time, realizing we're stronger than we thought we were. Not because anything was given to us. Because we kept going anyway.